Hello, fifth grade. Now that you should be done with your Frindle test, what I want to do is to start going over some different genres. Maybe you read the same books over and over, and I want to take you out of your comfort level a little bit. So the first genre, and genres are like mysteries, humor stories, realistic fiction, historical fiction, biographies, fairy tales. They're just different kind of books that you could be reading. And what I chose is a historical fiction book, and it's the brand new I Survived. It's a whole series of book. I think this is number 20 in the series. And it's the California Wildflowers of 2018. I know we're in 2020. This was written during 2018 when it was the worst wildfire season. 2020 even surpasses that, and we've all seen these images on TV. So I thought, what's happening now, as in current events in California and out west, as we're reading it, I think the images of what you see on TV, you could put that connection. So a historical fiction book is a book that is written using actual events that happened in history. Usually it goes back a little bit further than 2018, but it was a part of our history, and they use those events that are actually real and have happened in history, but it's a made-up story. The characters are all made up, but they just use those real facts from a time in our history. So what I always say is sit back, relax, and I hope someone gets hooked on the series I Survived. And after we're done, we'll do a review just like we did with Frindle. This is it'll be worth 2 points, and we'll review it, and then we all could take the accelerated reader quiz. Okay, it's I Survived, the California Wildfires 2018, and it's by Lauren Tarshis, and she wrote every one of the other 19 books in the series. And it's illustrated by Scott Dawson. Monday, July 23rd, 2018. A forest in Northern California around 8 a.m. Josh stared in horror at the blood-red glow rising up behind him. A massive wildfire was raging through the forest, a wall of flames devouring everything in its path. Josh and his cousin Holly were in a race for their lives. "Josh," Holly shouted, grabbing his hand, "this way." As they took off along the forest path, the hot wind gusted hard. Suddenly the air was filled with sparks and glowing embers and chunks of flaming wood. Josh felt them landing on his bare arms and legs, sizzling against his skin, scarring his scalp. He tried to brush them away, but they were all over him, biting into his skin like the white, hot teeth of a flesh-eating monster. He and Holly ran faster, but the wall of flames was closing in from behind, and all around them the burning embers were setting fires wherever they landed. On treetops, whoosh. On branches, whoosh. On the forest floor, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. With every gust of wind, more embers swirled. Flames shot higher and higher into the sky. A nightmare of sounds crashed against Josh's ears. The fire's roar, the moaning wind, the cracking and snapping of the trees. It was as though the air itself was shrieking in agony. Josh glanced around, struggling to breathe in the thickening smoke. Just minutes before, the forest had been peaceful and green. Now it was a terrifying maze afire. How could everything change so fast? And then, boom. A burning pine tree in front of them exploded. Shards of splintered wood sprayed out. Holly tried to pull Josh sideways, but Josh stumbled. When he looked up, there was a flaming branch speeding through the air. It was headed straight for his skull. Chapter 2. 12 days earlier. So it's going to be like a little flashback. Okay, so we're going back 12 days earlier, Wednesday, July 11th, 2018, North Creek, New Jersey, around 2 p.m. Josh snatched the basketball from the air and sprinted down the court. They were down by 2 points, just seconds left in the game. A monster of a kid was all over Josh, trying to steal the ball. But Josh spun around and took the shot just as the buzzer blared. Swish! 3 points. They'd won. Josh dropped to his knees in happy shock. His team swarmed around him, smothering him in sweaty hugs. You were unstoppable, said Josh's best friend Greg as they trotted off the court. That shot was sick. You played great too, Josh said, putting an arm around Greg's skinny shoulders. Josh glanced up into the stands, wishing his father had been there to see his buzzer beater. Dad was going to freak when he found out that Josh had made a 3-pointer. Josh had been practicing in the driveway for months, shooting and missing, with Dad always cheering him on. Don't give up, he'd shout. Dad always told Josh he could do anything he set his mind to. Just look at me, he'd say. Dad had grown up with practically nothing. He worked his butt off. Now he was one of the top guys at the big New York City bank where he worked. Everyone loved Tim Wallace. And Josh admired his father more than anyone in the world. Josh packed up his stuff and said goodbye to his coach. Need a ride? Greg asked as they headed out into the parking lot. I'm good, Josh said, high-fiving Greg. I'm sure my mom is on her way. But 5 minutes had passed, then 10. All Josh's friends had left, and Mom still wasn't there. She hadn't been feeling great today, that's why she'd skipped the game. But Josh could swear she'd said she'd be there to pick him up. Josh texted her, but she didn't answer. He was about to call Dad, but changed his mind. Dad was working at home today and was stressed out by an important deal he was working on. Josh knew he shouldn't bug him. Why not walk home, Josh thought. His house was maybe a mile away. The walk wouldn't kill him. He texted his mom his plan, slung his drawstring bag over his shoulders, and headed out of the parking lot. He walked along the sidewalk of the busy road, trying to stay in the shade. It was crazy hot. Nobody could remember such a broiling summer. Josh kicked a stone along the sidewalk, imagining a cool ocean wave crashing over him and washing his sweat away. That's where he should be right now, actually, splashing around in the ocean at the Jersey Shore. Usually in July, Mom and Dad and Josh spent 2 weeks there in a hotel right on the beach. But a couple of weeks ago, Mom and Dad broke the news. They had to cancel the trip. Sorry, buddy, Dad had said. Too much happening at work right now. Josh was pretty bummed. He kicked the rock again, thinking about the pool at the hotel. It had a water slide and a high diving board. But he understood why they couldn't go. You didn't become a superstar like Dad by blowing off work to lie around the beach. At least they had their pool at home. It didn't have a water slide, but it was still pretty sweet. Josh reached his neighborhood, where the big houses were mostly hidden behind fences and stone walls. He smiled to himself as he imagined what Dad would say when Josh told him about his winning basket. You're a champ, he'd boom. Josh rounded the last corner and then stopped short when his house came into view. His heart started to pound. There were 2 cars parked in his driveway. They were police cars. Josh's brain flooded with nightmare scenes, shattered windows, pools of blood, crumpled bodies. But nothing could have prepared him for what he saw as he sprinted up the driveway. His whole body started to prickle, like tiny alarms were buzzing under his skin. Mom was standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock. 2 police officers were leading a man to a police car. The man was in handcuffs. The man was Dad. And there's the police cars. Chapter 3. 6 days later, Tuesday, July 17th, 2018, a winding road in Northern California around 1:15 p.m. New Jersey man arrested was the headline. Tim Wallace, 42 years old, of North Creek, New Jersey, was arrested Wednesday afternoon. He is accused of stealing millions of dollars from the bank where he has worked for 15 years. Police arrested Wallace at the home he shares with his wife, Trish, and their 11-year-old son. Josh, Mom said, looking over from the driver's seat. Don't read those stories. They're just going to upset you. Sorry, Mom, Josh said, letting his phone drop to his lap. Mom was right. Those articles about Dad were totally garbage, filled with lies. Of course, Dad didn't steal money from the bank. It was all a mix-up, some problem with the bank's computer. Dad said it happened all the time. The police must have known right away they'd made a mistake. They let Dad come home just a few hours after they arrested him. Now all Dad had to do was go to court and explain everything to a judge, or something like that. What mattered was that soon this whole mess would all be cleared up. Mom reached over for Josh's hand, but he slid it away. He loved Mom, of course. She was the best, but he wasn't the touchy type. He glanced at her. Her hair wasn't all done up, and she had gray circles under her eyes. Poor Mom looked stressed out. "Let's take a break from reading those stories," she said. "That's why we came here." Here was the middle of nowhere, somewhere in California. They'd flown into the Sacramento airport this morning, and they'd been driving for what seemed like forever. They were heading to some little town where Mom's cousins lived. It had been Mom's idea that she and Josh get away while Dad straightened out the mess at the bank. "We'll have an adventure together," she'd said. Josh had figured he and Mom would go to the hotel on the shore like they'd planned. But Mom had decided this was the perfect chance to visit their cousins, Holly, who was Josh's age, and her mom, Nicole. Josh knew Mom and Nicole had been buddies when they were little girls, but those two hadn't seen each other in years. And Josh and his mom had never even met Holly. Mom had showed Josh Holly's picture. She looked friendly enough, but from what Mom had said, he could just tell that he and Holly were different types. She seemed all into nature and stuff like that. Trees could be cool if you could climb them, and Josh loved animals. He'd just rather play video games than die of boredom on a hike. And where exactly did these cousins live? Josh stared out the car window. They seemed to be driving through an endless forest. He gripped his phone tighter. At least he could check the Yankees scores and FaceTime with Greg and Dad whenever he wanted. Josh leaned his head against the window. He was just dozing off when Mom's voice jolted him back to life. "Josh," Mom said, "look at this." Josh turned to the window and his eyes bugged out. They were still driving through the forest, except every single tree was dead, bare and black and twisted. It looked like an evil witch had cast a killing spell, destroying everything for miles around. A chill ran down Josh's spine. What could have happened here? Chapter 4. "Must have been a wildfire," Mom said. "California's had some big ones lately." They drove more slowly, and Josh took it all in. He'd seen some videos of wildfires, flames shooting up into the sky, black smoke, big planes dumping water, and that bright red foam from the sky. Excuse me. But none of it seemed real. It was like a clip from a disaster movie or even a video game. Josh hadn't thought about what it really meant for a whole forest to burn up. Now Josh gaped at the dead trees around him. There had to be thousands of them. They reminded him of skeletons, all bare and charred and twisted, their spiked branches reaching out like bony arms. He was glad when he and Mom finally drove out of the burned area and the forest turned green again. A little ways up, Mom stopped at a small store so they could get some snacks. "Looks like you had a fire around here," Mom said to the gray-haired woman at the cash register. "Sure did," the woman said, ringing up their chips and waters. "July of 2015. Burned for a full week." "Goodness," Mom said. "Lost some houses too," the woman added, shaking her head sadly. "These fires are happening more and more, up and down California. Other places too." "Why is that?" Mom asked, swiping her credit card. "I'm no scientist," the woman said, putting their snacks into a paper bag. "But it has to be the weather. Everything's out of whack. Our summers are so long and hot, we hardly get any rain anymore." "Our weather's strange in New Jersey too," Mom said. "Oh, that's for sure," Josh thought. "And not just the broiling summers. Winters were wild too. One day you could get frostbite from the cold, and the next day it was warm enough to wear a t-shirt." Mom wished the woman luck, and they left the store. Josh was just buckling his seatbelt when his phone buzzed. He picked it up, figuring it was Dad. He and Josh had been in touch all day, but this time it was Greg. "Hey, you alive?" "Barely," Josh wrote back, smiling as he pictured Greg's goofy grin. They'd been best buddies since preschool. Josh loved the guy, even if he could be a little dopey at times. Like a couple of nights ago, they'd been playing video games in Josh's basement, wolfing down chips and Oreos. Suddenly, Greg turned to him and said, "Don't worry, I hear your dad probably won't have to go to jail for too long." Josh had just stared at Greg, amazed that he could make such a dumb joke. "I'm kidding," Greg said quickly. I know, Josh said, but it's not funny. Mom and Dad were still pretty upset about Dad getting arrested for no reason. I'm really sorry, Greg said. And for a second, Josh was afraid Greg was going to start crying. Forget it, Josh said, giving Greg a friendly shove. He knew Greg wasn't trying to be mean, and why wreck a fun night? Too bad Greg wasn't here with him now. This car ride would be way more exciting. They texted back and forth about the Yankees until Greg had to go. Don't have too much fun, Greg wrote. Josh signed off with a googly-eyed, tongue-out emoji. An hour later, Mom turned off the main street onto a skinny dirt road. They bumped along, driving deeper and deeper into the woods. Finally, they came to a small white house. How charming, Mom said as they stepped out of the car. Josh guessed so. The house had a front porch with a picnic table and 2 rocking chairs. There were pots of flowers everywhere and all kinds of birds chirping and swooping around. It reminded Josh of a house from a kid's picture book. He half expected Goldilocks to come skipping out the front door. They heard voices, a woman and a girl, echoing somewhere outside, in the back of the house. Why don't you grab the suitcases and bring them to the porch, Mom said to Josh. I'll go find Holly and Nicole. Josh hauled his duffel and Mom's suitcase up to the porch, then walked back to the car. He looked around some more, squinting in the sun. No basketball hoop, and he doubted there was a pool. Josh's heart sank as he imagined the boring week ahead. He fished his phone out of his pocket. He made a funny bored face and snapped a selfie for Dad. Hi, from the middle of nowhere, he typed. But then when he tried to send it, it wouldn't go through. He stared at his phone screen. No cell service. And that's when he heard it. Hiss! Josh swung his head around and his heart stopped when he saw it. A massive lizard with a brown and black speckled skin. It was at least 6 feet long with a bullet-shaped head and a long tail. It looked like a leftover dinosaur or something. Whatever it was moving very fast, jaws open, teeth gleaming. It was headed right for Josh. And with that, we will end at chapter 4. I hope you're starting to enjoy it. Okay, the latest one in the I Survived series. Okay, take care and hope to see you soon, 5th grade.